In the quiet, unassuming town of Rockford, Illinois, a chill ran down the spine of the community one summer afternoon in 1983. The local ice cream shop, a favorite among townsfolk, was the scene of an eerie crime that would baffle investigators for years to come. The day dawned bright and sunny, with children lined up at the ice cream shop, their faces beaming with anticipation. The shop's owner, a jovial man named Peter Harvey, was nowhere to be found, an unusual occurrence given Peter's punctuality and dedication to his business. As the hours ticked by, worry replaced anticipation. A few concerned locals decided to check on Peter at his home, only to be met with a sight that would haunt them forever. The house was in disarray, signs of a struggle evident. But Peter? He was nowhere to be found. The local police were immediately alerted. The scene they walked into was chilling. A fight had clearly taken place. Furniture was strewn about, a lamp had been knocked over, and there was a chilling message scrawled on the wall in what seemed to be blood. Taste your fear. The investigation kicked off immediately. DNA samples were collected, fingerprints were lifted, and the entire town was questioned. But despite their best efforts, the police found no leads. It was as though Peter had vanished into thin air. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and then into years. The ice cream shop closed down, a grim reminder of the town's lost joviality. Peter's case turned cold, his name whispered in hushed tones as people speculated about what could have happened to him. Then, in the winter of 1992, almost a decade after Peter's disappearance, a letter arrived at the Rockford Police Department. It was an anonymous tip, pointing them towards an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. The police, not wanting to leave any stone unturned, decided to investigate. What they found inside the factory was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Tucked away in a corner was a small room, its walls adorned with newspaper clippings of Peter's disappearance. And there, in the center of the room, were the skeletal remains of the beloved ice cream shop owner. The anonymous tip had led them to the final pieces of the puzzle. DNA testing confirmed that the remains were indeed Peter's. The cause of death? A single fatal blow to the head, but who was the anonymous tipster? And why had they waited nearly a decade to come forward? The police had a new lead, a new mystery to unravel, and this time they were determined to bring Peter's killer to justice. In the end, it was a combination of old-fashioned detective work and advanced forensics that led to the capture of the killer. A local drifter with a history of violence was linked to the crime scene through DNA evidence left on the bloody message on Peter's wall. The man eventually confessed, revealing a twisted motive rooted in envy and resentment. The case of Peter Harvey, the jovial ice cream shop owner, was finally closed. His killer was brought to justice, providing a sense of closure to the town that had been haunted by his mysterious disappearance. But the memory of that summer afternoon in 1983, when fear replaced the taste of ice cream, would forever linger in the hearts of Rockford's residents.
Imagine receiving a cryptic note in your mailbox, no return address, just a chilling message. An everyday occurrence turned upside down, transforming the mundane into the macabre. A seemingly ordinary day in a quiet suburb disrupted by an eerie sense of dread. A slip of paper that would soon become the epicenter of a real-life horror story. The note, written in a hurried scrawl, hints at a crime yet to be discovered. "Beware the silent house on Maple Street," it reads. The words, although simple, send a shiver down your spine. A whisper of danger in your ear. The ambiguity of the message, its ominous undertone, creates an atmosphere thick with confusion and unease. A crime, a silent house, but what does it all mean? The cryptic message leaves more questions than answers, a puzzle waiting to be solved, a mystery begging to be unraveled. What would you do if you were the one to find this note? In every crime, there's a victim. In this case, the victim was unseen, unheard, and unknown. Imagine a crime scene devoid of the typical signs of struggle or violence. A pristine room that whispers of its everyday normality, a place where life seems to hum along as usual. Yet something is amiss, something crucial, something vital is missing, a person, a presence, an existence that once filled this ordinary space with extraordinary life. But without a body, without a voice, without a face, how do we identify this victim? This was the daunting task that fell upon the authorities. Alerted by an anonymous tip, they arrived at the scene to find no trace of a victim. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no immediate indication of a crime. The room was in perfect order, as if its occupant had just stepped out for a moment. But as the hours turned into days, and the occupant never returned, the sinister reality began to seep in. The initial investigation was fraught with confusion. Officers combed through the scene, searching for any tiny clue that might shed light on this enigma. They sifted through the victim's belongings, delved into their personal life, and spoke to everyone they knew. The more they discovered, the more baffling the case became. The victim was a ghost, a shadow that seemed to have vanished without a trace. This wasn't a typical crime scene. There was no body to examine, no obvious signs of foul play to analyze. Yet the absence was deafening, the silence screamed of a crime. The authorities were left grappling with an invisible victim, an elusive entity whose life had been abruptly and inexplicably cut short. As the dust settled on the initial investigation, the authorities were left with more questions than answers. Who was this unseen victim? What had happened to them? And most chillingly, who was responsible? An unseen victim, an unknown crime, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. In the face of such a perplexing case, the hunt for the truth was only just beginning. The clues were there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to piece them together. They were cryptic, carefully etched into the fabric of the crime scene, intentionally left by the perpetrator. Like a dark and twisted breadcrumb trail, they were leading somewhere, but the path was obscure, the destination unknown. Each clue was a puzzle within itself, an enigma wrapped in a riddle. They were a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that didn't seem to fit together, a maze without a clear exit. The authorities were baffled. The clues were like a foreign language, a cipher that needed decoding. Each one was a fragment of a larger picture, a piece of a puzzle that was yet to be solved. The first clue was a series of numbers and letters, scrawled in a seemingly random sequence. It was like a code, a secret language known only to its creator. The second clue was even more mystifying, a set of symbols, each one seemingly unrelated to the next. The third, a quote from an obscure piece of literature, a line that seemed to mean nothing in isolation. The authorities began to dig deeper, to delve into the mind of the perpetrator. They sought help from cryptologists, from linguists, from literary scholars. They began to see patterns, to form hypotheses. The numbers and letters, they realized, were not random. They were coordinates, a location. The symbols were not unrelated. They were an ancient script, a message. The quote was not meaningless. It was a hint, a clue to the perpetrator's motive. As the authorities pieced together the clues, they started to see an image forming. But it was like looking at a painting through a foggy window. The details were obscure, the outlines blurry. The image was forming, but it was not yet clear. The clues were slowly starting to form a picture, but the image was still blurry. The puzzle was coming together, but the picture was still incomplete. The mystery was far from over. In every mystery, there's an unlikely suspect, someone you'd never expect. And so we turn our attention to the most unexpected character in our tale, the local librarian, Miss Eleanor Green. To the townsfolk, she was simply a quiet woman who lived for her books. But could she have another, darker side? Eleanor's connection to our unseen victim, the young and vivacious Emily, was tenuous at best. Emily was a regular at the library, often seen engrossed in the latest mystery thriller. They shared polite conversation, nothing more, nothing less. Or so it seemed. Eleanor's alibi for the night of Emily's disappearance was watertight. She was at a town council meeting, surrounded by a dozen reliable witnesses. But what about the days leading up to that fateful night? The hours that were unaccounted for? Evidence against Eleanor was circumstantial, yet unnerving. A library book found at Emily's deserted home, overdue by 2 weeks. It was a crime novel, one that eerily paralleled the circumstances of Emily's disappearance. The book was checked out under Eleanor's account, a privilege reserved for librarians. Further, Eleanor had an uncanny knowledge of Emily's reading habits, her likes, her dislikes. Was it merely the keen observation of a dedicated librarian or something more sinister? Then there was the curious case of the cryptic notes. Eleanor, as a lover of ciphers and codes, often used them to categorize books. A similar cipher was found within Emily's belongings. Could this quiet, unassuming woman who lived amongst her beloved books be the mastermind behind this chilling crime? Could she have used her extensive knowledge of mysteries and crime to craft the perfect disappearance? Or is she simply a victim of circumstance, caught in a web of coincidences? Is she the unlikely suspect or the unlikely scapegoat? As we delve deeper into this mystery, we must question everything, trust no one, and remember, appearances can be deceiving. Could this unlikely suspect really be the mastermind behind this chilling crime? Only time and our relentless pursuit of the truth will tell. Just when you think you've figured it out, the truth hits you like a bolt from the blue. So, who was the true perpetrator? The evidence, the cryptic clues, the unseen victim, it all led to one person. Marianne, the friendly, unsuspecting neighbor who lived just 2 doors down from our victim. Now you might be wondering, how could someone so ordinary, so seemingly innocent, be behind such a heinous act? Let's connect the dots. The mysterious message left at the crime scene, remember? It was written in a unique blend of shorthand and code, a code only 2 people in the world knew, the victim and Marianne. They had created it as children, a secret language just for them. And the motive, it was buried deep within their shared past. A bitter rivalry over a shared love interest in their teenage years, a feud that never healed, a grudge that Marianne held onto for decades. The unseen victim, the one we've been trying to piece together, was a lifelong friend of Marianne's. A friend she felt had betrayed her, and so she had devised a plan so intricate, so meticulously crafted, that she almost got away with it. But the truth has a funny way of revealing itself. The cryptic clues, the coded message, the unlikely suspect, it all started to come together. And then the most damning piece of evidence, a letter. A letter written by Marianne, confessing her feelings of betrayal, her anger, her plan. A letter she had never sent but kept hidden in her home. This was not just a crime of passion, but one of revenge. A tale of friendship turned sour, of a grudge held onto for far too long, of a shocking act that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. The truth was out, but the shock was far from over. Every crime leaves a mark, an echo of what once was. And this crime was no exception. In the aftermath, the community was left with a bitter taste of betrayal. The perpetrator, once a trusted member of the society, was sentenced to life imprisonment. A harsh penalty, yet nothing compared to the terror they had spread. The ripple effects of the crime were profound. Trust was shattered, friendships were strained, and the once peaceful community was cloaked in a shroud of suspicion and fear. But as time passed, the community started to heal. People banded together, not to forget, but to remember and learn. The lessons were hard-earned. They learned the importance of vigilance, of questioning the seemingly ordinary, of not taking everything at face value. The crime served as a stark reminder that darkness can lurk in the most unexpected corners. In the end, the mystery was solved, but the echoes of the crime still linger, a chilling reminder of a truth that once was hidden. Imagine a small, peaceful town where nothing out of the ordinary ever happens. Picture a place where the days are as predictable as the changing seasons, where the faces are familiar and the biggest event is the annual summer fair. This idyllic setting is the backdrop of our story, a tale that begins with a chilling discovery that would shatter the tranquility of this quaint community. Nestled amidst rolling hills and framed by a crystal-clear river, the town's heart beats from its local library. A hub of knowledge and community gathering, it is a place where young and old alike find solace in the pages of countless books, where imaginations run wild and where time stands still. But one fateful day, the library's peaceful silence was broken by a discovery that would send icy tendrils of fear through the town's heart. Hidden within the pages of an aging, forgotten novel, a library visitor stumbled upon an ominous letter. The letter, penned with unsettling detail and chilling precision, outlined a heinous act yet to be committed. A crime so horrific, so out of place in this serene town, that it felt more like a gruesome tale ripped from the pages of a horror novel than a real possibility. But the specificity of the details, the lucidity of the plan, made it impossible to dismiss as a mere prank. As word of the letter spread, a ripple of unease swept through the town. The friendly smiles of neighbors replaced with worried glances, the once bustling library now a place of hushed whispers and fearful speculation. The letter's chilling words echoed in everyone's mind, turning the peaceful town into a stage set for a dreadful plot. The tranquility of the town was shattered, replaced by a chilling sense of foreboding. The discovery of the letter marked the end of normalcy, the end of a peaceful existence. And as the town braced itself for the unfolding of a terrifying prediction, they could only hope that this chilling discovery would not be the prologue to a real-life horror story. The content of the letter sent a wave of panic throughout the town. An ominous prediction, inked in a handwriting that was both elegant and eerie, had made its way into the hands of the local law enforcement. This wasn't your ordinary letter. It was a chilling forecast of a crime, a dreadful event that was to unfurl within the town in the coming week. The letter offered no reprieve, no cloak of vagueness to shelter under. It was explicit, detailing a crime of such a sinister nature that it made even the most seasoned officers blanch. The crime, it said, would be committed under the cover of night, when the town was at its most vulnerable. The victim, the location, the method, all were outlined with a disturbing precision that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to read. As the details of the letter began to seep into the public consciousness, an icy fear gripped the town. The once bustling streets grew eerily quiet, the laughter and chatter replaced by hushed whispers and anxious glances. The townsfolk, once a tight-knit community, were now united by a shared sense of dread. Every knock, every ring of the phone, every unexpected visitor was met with a jolt of fear. The town was on edge, its peace disrupted by the shadow of the impending crime. Meanwhile, the law enforcement was in a state of disarray. The letter had left them stumped. No leads, no suspects, just a cryptic prediction. The police combed through the town, questioning the locals, tracing every possible connection, but it was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. The more they delved into the case, the more elusive the truth seemed. The panic was palpable, the tension tangible. The town was caught in a vice of fear, waiting, anticipating, dreading. The unknown was the town's biggest enemy, the uncertainty, its greatest fear. The clock was ticking and the day of the predicted crime was drawing near. With the dreadful day approaching, the local police force sprung into action, their instincts sharpened by the threat looming over the town. The usually quiet precinct buzzed with a newfound urgency, a stark contrast to the tranquility that had once prevailed. The first course of action was to interview the residents, an endeavor that saw officers combing through the town, knocking on doors and making inquiries. They hoped to unearth any clue, no matter how insignificant it might seem. Each conversation was a desperate attempt to piece together a puzzle that remained frustratingly incomplete. In tandem with the interviews, patrols were ramped up, the squad cars becoming a common sight on the once serene streets. The flashing blues and reds, usually a beacon of safety, now served as a chilling reminder of the impending danger. It was as if the town was under a perpetual state of twilight, caught between the safety of the day and the unknown threats of the night. Desperate for any edge, the local force reached out to criminal profilers, experts who could delve into the psyche of the unidentified threat. They hoped these profilers could provide insights, possibly predict the perpetrator's next move. But even with the profiler's expertise, no concrete leads emerged. Every potential lead, every glimmer of hope, seemed to vanish as quickly as it had appeared. The town's anxiety heightened. It was as if a collective shudder ran through its heart, the dread seeping into the very foundations of their homes. The looming threat, the unanswered questions, the fear of the unknown, it all culminated in a palpable tension that hung heavy in the air. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, the answers remained elusive. The police, much like the residents, could only wait, hope, and prepare for the worst. Their determination remained unbroken, their resolve unwavering, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead was a shadow they could not shake off. As the sun set on the eve of the predicted day, the town held its breath. The tension reaching a fever pitch, the quiet before the storm had never felt so deafening. The day of the predicted crime finally arrived. A palpable tension hung heavy in the air, like a thick fog refusing to lift. The town, once teeming with life, now sat still under the weight of impending dread. The police presence was amplified tenfold, their faces mirrors of the fear etched on every townsfolk's visage. Roadblocks were erected, patrols were intensified, and every precautionary measure was taken. Yet the clock kept ticking, the ominous hour drawing closer. Every tick of the clock was a drumbeat in the heart of the town, each passing minute amplifying the anxiety. The usual humdrum of life was replaced by an eerie silence, the only sound being the distant echo of police radios and the occasional hushed whisper. The town, once a haven of tranquility, was now a fortress on high alert. Then as the clock struck the dreaded hour, it happened. Despite the heightened vigilance and increased security, the crime occurred just as predicted. A shiver ran down the spine of the town, the shockwave reverberating through every nook and corner. It was as if the town itself had been robbed of its breath, its pulse momentarily stilled. The police were left baffled and bewildered. All their efforts, their heightened security, their meticulous planning, all proved to be futile. No leads, no evidence, not a hint of the perpetrator's identity. The crime was clean, almost professional, leaving the law enforcement grappling in the dark. The crime was not just an act of violence. It was a blow to the town's spirit, to its sense of security. It was a chilling reminder of the prophecy that had loomed over their heads like a sword of Damocles. The horror of the prophecy was no longer a distant fear, but a stark reality. The town was plunged into darkness, the horror of the prophecy becoming a reality. The once peaceful town was now a scene straight out of a horror movie, the dread of the unknown casting long, fearful shadows over every soul. The unfolding had begun. In the aftermath of the crime, a shocking revelation came to light. As the dust settled and the town tried to come to terms with the chilling events that had transpired, an unexpected confession materialized. A local teenager, known for his imaginative storytelling and immense talent as a writer, stepped forward. He was an avid fan of crime novels, often lost in the intricate plots and the thrill of solving mysteries from the safety of his room. But what he never anticipated was his fictional world colliding with harsh reality. The teenager had written a letter, a piece of fiction so intense, so detailed, that it mirrored the crime to an eerie extent. It was a work of his imagination, a crime story he had penned for a local writing competition. But the story was not meant to escape the confines of his notebook. It was not meant to be found. It was certainly not meant to be a blueprint for a real-life horror. But, as fate would have it, the letter did find its way into the wrong hands. The real perpetrator, whose identity remained a mystery, had somehow come across this piece of fiction, and they had used it, followed it, turning the teenager's fictional crime into a real-life nightmare. The teenager's confession sent shockwaves through the community. The horrifying realization that a piece of fiction had played such a pivotal role in the crime was a bitter pill to swallow. This was no classic ghost story or haunted house tale. This was a living nightmare, a chilling plot lifted straight from a young boy's imagination and enacted with terrifying precision. The lines between fact and fiction were blurred, and the whole town found itself trapped in a plot twist nobody saw coming. In a twisted turn of events, fiction had become a horrifying reality. The revelation was chilling, leaving everyone questioning how a story, meant to be a thrilling ride of imagination, had turned into a spine-chilling true crime. The confession led the police to the real criminal. It was like a dark, twisted maze finally opening up, revealing its secrets. As the confession was detailed, the culprit was identified as a disgruntled former resident, nursing a grudge against the town. A grudge so deep it had manifested into a horrifying series of events. The police, armed with the confession, descended upon the perpetrator's hideout. It was a tense situation, every heartbeat echoing with the weight of the crimes committed. The disgruntled resident, once a part of the town's community, had transformed into a menace that had held the town in a vice-like grip of fear. Upon apprehension, the criminal was put on trial. The court proceedings were a spectacle, a public catharsis for a town that had been living under the shadow of terror. Each piece of evidence presented, each testimony heard, painted a chilling picture of the atrocities committed. And then came the verdict. The gavel fell, its echo resonating with the collective sigh of relief from the town's residents. The perpetrator was sentenced, and justice, at long last, prevailed. The sentence was a reflection of the severity of the crimes committed, a strong message that such actions would not be tolerated. The town breathed a sigh of relief. The dark cloud that had hung over them was finally lifting. The residents began to reclaim their lives, their homes, their town. But the scars remained. They were a constant reminder of the harrowing times they had lived through. In the wake of the trial, life slowly returned to normal, yet the memory of the dreadful crimes committed continued to cast a long shadow over the town. The events had left an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of its residents. In the end, justice was served, but the town would forever be marked by the chilling events that unfolded. It was a tale of horror and despair, but also of resilience and justice. A tale that would echo through the town's history, a grim reminder of the darkness that once lurked in their midst.
Do you enjoy spooky short stories? Consider subscribing.